"This gift is for my real son," he announced, caressing his secretary's belly at my party. My ultrasound slipped from my hand. When he saw it, he said, "A baby won't make me stay with you." Everyone laughed. But when I slid a DNA test across the table and showed who the real father was, the room went silent. I spent 3 hours getting ready for Derek's birthday party. 3 hours that I should have spent resting because my back was killing me and my ankles had swollen to the point where my regular shoes didn't fit anymore. But I wanted to look good. I wanted him to see me the way he used to, before the pregnancy weight and the tiredness that seemed to live in my bones now. The dress I'd chosen was navy blue, empire waist to accommodate my 6-month belly. I'd even gone to the salon that morning to get my hair done in those soft waves Derek always said he liked. Standing in front of the mirror, I looked at myself and tried to see what he saw. Was I still pretty? Did I still matter? My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Running late. Start without me if you need to." I stared at those words. It was his own birthday party. The party I'd planned for weeks, sending invitations, coordinating with the venue, choosing the menu he'd like, and he was running late. The Magnolia Room looked beautiful when I arrived. I'd chosen blue and silver decorations, his favorite colors. The tables were set perfectly, white linens with silver chargers, small arrangements of white roses in the center. 80 people would be here tonight. His colleagues from the medical technology company, where he worked, some old college friends, his mother Patricia, and a handful of my own friends who I rarely saw anymore. Martha, the event coordinator, greeted me at the door. "Mrs. Mitchell, everything is ready, and the caterers are set up in the back, and the bar is fully stocked." "Thank you," I said, my hand instinctively going to my belly. The baby had been kicking all afternoon, like she could sense my nervousness. People started arriving around 7. I stood near the entrance, greeting everyone, accepting their compliments on the venue, on my dress, on how well I was carrying. Derek's coworkers from the office were polite but distant. I'd met most of them before, but I was always Derek's wife, not a person in my own right. "Where's the birthday boy?" someone asked. "He's on his way," I said, checking my phone again. Nothing. Patricia arrived at 7:30, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a pale pink suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She kissed the air near my cheek and looked around the room appraisingly. "This is nice, Claire," she said, though her tone suggested it was merely acceptable. "Though I do think the roses might have been better in cream rather than white. White can look so stark." I bit back my response. I'd learned years ago that disagreeing with Patricia was pointless. By 8 o'clock, Derek still wasn't there. People were starting to mill around, drinking, making conversation, glancing toward the door. I kept smiling, kept playing the role of gracious hostess. But inside, I felt something twisting tighter and tighter. Then I heard her laugh. I'd know that laugh anywhere. High, practiced, the kind that's designed to make men turn and look. Amber Chen had been Derek's secretary for about 10 months now. I'd met her twice. Both times she'd looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not hostile, but not warm either. Assessing maybe. The door opened and Derek walked in. He looked good, hair freshly cut, wearing the navy suit I'd bought him for his last promotion. And beside him, her hand on his arm, was Amber. She was wearing red. A tight red dress that showed off her figure. Her long black hair falling in perfect waves down her back. And she was visibly pregnant, very pregnant. The room went quiet for a moment. That awful kind of quiet where everyone has noticed something wrong, but no one wants to be the first to acknowledge it. Derek's eyes found mine across the room. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Guilt maybe, or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by this strange defiance. He walked further into the room, Amber still on his arm. People parted to let them through. I stood frozen near the gift table, my hand gripping the edge so hard my knuckles went white. "Sorry we're late, everyone," Derek announced, his voice carrying across the room. Traffic was terrible. He didn't come to me, didn't kiss me hello, or explain why he'd brought his secretary to his own birthday party. He just moved through the crowd, accepting birthday wishes. Amber never leaving his side. I felt someone touch my arm. Jennifer, one of the few real friends I had left. Claire, she whispered. Are you okay? I nodded, though I wasn't. My chest felt tight. The baby was kicking hard now, like she was reacting to my stress. Dinner was announced, and people moved toward the tables. Derek was at the head table, of course. Patricia was there, and a few of his closest friends from work. There was an empty chair next to Derek. My chair. Except Amber was sitting in it. I stood there, staring, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Jennifer's hand tightened on my arm. Come sit with us, she said quietly, starting to guide me toward a different table. But Derek had stood up. He was tapping his wine glass with a fork, calling for everyone's attention. I know we're here to celebrate my birthday, he said, and there was this energy in his voice I'd never heard before. Excitement, pride. But I have an announcement to make, something I've been waiting to share. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Derek turned and pulled Amber to her feet, his hand going to her stomach in a gesture so intimate it made me feel sick. This, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of that silent room, is Amber, and she's carrying my son. My real son. The ultrasound image in my purse. I'd brought it to show people, to share the joy of my baby girl. I reached for it automatically, my hands shaking so badly I dropped it. The black and white image fluttered to the floor. Derek saw it fall. He looked right at me, and I saw something cold in his eyes. Something I'd never seen before. A baby won't make me stay with you, Claire, he said. Not loudly, almost conversationally. But in that silent room, everyone heard. Someone laughed. One of his work friends, a guy named Brad, who'd always struck me as cruel. The laugh broke something, and suddenly there were murmurs, shocked whispers, a few uncomfortable chuckles from people who didn't know how else to react. I bent down and picked up the ultrasound. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. My little girl, 24 weeks old, and due in 14 more weeks. I stood there holding that image, looking at Derek across the room. He was smiling. Not at me, at Amber, at the people congratulating him, at his mother, who was standing now too, tears in her eyes, hugging Amber like she was the daughter-in-law she'd always wanted. No one was looking at me. I felt something in my belly. Not a kick. Something different. A tightening. A pulling sensation that made me gasp. Jennifer was at my side immediately. Claire, what's wrong? I need to sit down, I whispered. She helped me to a chair. The pain passed after a moment, but my heart was still racing. Stress, I thought. Just stress. The baby's fine. She has to be fine. Across the room, Derek was opening gifts. Amber was beside him, laughing, her hand on her own pregnant belly. Patricia was taking photos. It was like I wasn't even there. I looked around the room at all these people. Derek's colleagues, his friends. People who'd eaten the food I'd ordered, drunk the wine I'd chosen, celebrated in the space I'd decorated, and not one of them was looking at me. Jennifer drove me home that night. I didn't say goodbye to Derek. I didn't make a scene. I just left, and no one noticed. In the car, she kept asking if I was okay, if I needed to go to the hospital, if she should call someone. I told her I was fine. I told her I just needed to rest, but I wasn't fine. I lay in bed that night, still in my navy blue dress, and stared at the ceiling. Derek didn't come home. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls, no texts, no explanation. My hand went to my belly, feeling my daughter move inside me. She was alive. She was healthy. She was mine. And in that moment, in that dark, quiet room, I felt something I'd never felt before in 8 years of marriage. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel like crying. I felt something cold settle into my chest. Something clear and sharp and very, very certain. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what Derek needed or what Derek wanted or how to make Derek happy. I was thinking about what I knew, what I'd seen, what didn't make sense. Derek had always wanted children. We'd been trying for 3 years. He'd been the one pushing for it, talking about starting a family, about leaving a legacy. So why had it taken this long? And why, after all that time, did his secretary suddenly turn up pregnant? I reached for my phone and opened the photo app, scrolling back through months of pictures. Derek at the gym. Derek at work events. Derek at his last doctor's appointment. I stopped on that one. His last doctor's appointment. He'd gone alone, said it was just routine. That was 8 months ago. I'd never thought to question it before. But now, lying in this empty bed, holding the ultrasound of my daughter, something had shifted in me. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fade quietly into the background of my own life. I was going to find out the truth. All of it. I woke up at dawn, still wearing that navy blue dress. My makeup had smeared across the pillow, and my hair, those soft waves I'd paid for, was matted against my head. The baby was moving, that gentle, rolling sensation that usually comforted me. This morning, it just reminded me of how alone I was. Derek's side of the bed was untouched. I reached for my phone. No messages, no calls, nothing. I sat up slowly, my back protesting, and looked around our bedroom. I decorated this room 3 years ago. Soft gray walls, white furniture, everything clean and minimal because Derek said he needed calm spaces to think. My original plan had been warmer colors, maybe some artwork, but he'd convinced me that his way was better. More sophisticated, he'd said. I'd believed him. I'd believed him about everything. The house was too quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming downstairs, the sound of a car passing on the street, normal sounds. The world was moving on like nothing had happened. I needed to shower. Needed to wash off last night, put on clean clothes, maybe eat something. The baby needed me to eat something. But I couldn't move yet. I sat there on the edge of the bed, holding my phone, waiting for something I couldn't name. When my phone finally rang, I jumped. But it wasn't Derek. It was Jennifer. Claire, honey, how are you feeling? I opened my mouth to say, fine, the way I always did. The word wouldn't come out. I'm here, was what I managed instead. Do you need me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. No, I said. No, I just need to think. Did Derek come home? No. She was quiet for a moment. Claire, what are you going to do? It was the first time anyone had asked me that question. Not what Derek wanted. Not how to fix this. What was I going to do? I don't know yet, I said. After we hung up, I finally got in the shower. The hot water felt good on my aching back. I stood there longer than I should have, watching the water circle the drain, thinking about everything I'd ignored. 3 years ago, I'd been a project manager at a marketing firm. I was good at my job, really good. I'd managed campaigns for major clients, had a team of 5 people reporting to me, was up for a promotion. Then Derek got offered the director position at his company. It was a big deal, a significant raise, but it would mean longer hours, more travel, more responsibility. He'd come home one night and sat me down at this very kitchen table. I need your support on this, Claire, he'd said. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for, but I can't do it without you. I'd asked what he meant. The hours are going to be brutal at first. I need to know you're here, handling things at home. I can't be worried about our life falling apart while I'm trying to build my career. Our life, like it was something we both shared equally. Like my career was just a hobby we could set aside. What about my promotion? I'd asked. He'd taken my hands, looked at me with those blue eyes that I'd fallen in love with. Baby, you'll have other opportunities. This is my one chance. And think about it, with my raise, we won't need your income as much. You could even work part-time, focus on starting our family. Starting our family, that had been the real hook. We'd been trying for 6 months at that point. I was 31, feeling that biological clock everyone talks about, and Derek had painted this picture of me at home, pregnant, not stressed about deadlines and demanding clients. It had sounded good, safe. Right. So I'd turned down my promotion, cut back to part-time. And 6 months later, when Derek said the part-time hours were still too much, that he needed me more available, I'd quit entirely. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of being available. 3 years of making his favorite meals managing his schedule, entertaining his colleagues, taking care of his mother when she was sick. 3 years of trying to get pregnant and failing, month after month after month. Until 5 months ago, when I finally saw those 2 pink lines. I'd been so happy, so relieved. Finally, I'd thought. Finally, we'd have the family we'd been trying for. Finally, everything I'd given up would make sense. Derek's reaction had been strange, though. Not excited exactly, more like nervous. He'd asked if I was sure, made me take 3 more tests, asked about my cycle dates, wanted to know exactly when I thought I'd conceived. I'd thought he was just anxious. First time dad nerves. Now I wondered what he'd really been thinking. I got dressed in sweatpants and one of Derek's old college t-shirts. It was the only thing that fit comfortably over my belly anymore. I went downstairs and forced myself to eat a piece of toast with peanut butter. The baby needed nutrition even if I didn't feel hungry. The house felt different in daylight. Bigger somehow. Emptier. I walked through the rooms I'd cleaned and organized and decorated and realized I couldn't remember the last time Derek had said he liked anything I'd done. When had this place stopped feeling like ours and started feeling like his? I found myself standing outside his office door. It was always locked. His private space, he called it, where he did important work calls, reviewed confidential documents. I'd respected that boundary for 8 years. I tried the handle, locked, as expected, but I knew where he kept the spare key. I'd found it once while cleaning, hidden in a box of his old college textbooks in the garage. He didn't know I knew. It took me 15 minutes to find the box. My back was aching by the time I climbed back up the stairs with the key. I stood outside his office door for a long moment, the key in my hand, knowing that once I opened this door, I couldn't unknow what I found. Respire. So respire. I unlocked the door. Derek's office was neat, organized, very him. Dark wood desk, leather chair, diplomas on the wall. His laptop was gone, probably with him, but there were filing cabinets along one wall. I started with the desk drawers. Bills, work documents, nothing unusual. Then I moved to the filing cabinets. The first drawer had old tax returns, insurance policies, mortgage documents, standard stuff. The second drawer was more interesting. Personal files, labeled and organized. Medical, legal, financial, personal. I pulled out the medical file first. Inside were records from his annual physicals, dental checkups, nothing remarkable. But at the back of the folder was a business card for a clinic I didn't recognize. Riverside Fertility Center. My hand started shaking. I put the file down and reached for the legal folder. Inside was a manila envelope, unsealed. I opened it and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words swam in front of my eyes. I flipped through the pages. It was a draft, dated from 2 months ago, before I'd even announced my pregnancy publicly. Before Amber was obviously showing. He'd been planning to leave me. And based on the notes in the margins, he'd been planning to claim I was unstable, that I'd become too dependent, that the marriage had been deteriorating for years. I read every word. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. Cold. There was a post-it note stuck to one page. Separate finances before filing. Protect assets. I looked at the date again. 2 months ago. I pulled out my phone and checked our bank account, the joint one we'd use for household expenses. I'd stopped looking at it regularly after I quit my job. Derek handled the finances, made sure bills were paid, gave me a credit card for groceries and necessities. It took me 3 tries to remember the login. When I finally got in, I stared at the balance, $847. We'd had over $30,000 in that account. I knew because I'd checked it 6 months ago when we were discussing whether to renovate the kitchen. I clicked through the transaction history. Steady withdrawals over the past 3 months, amounts between $2,000 and $5,000, always with notes like home renovation or investment opportunity or business expense. Derek was emptying our joint accounts. I sat down in his leather chair, that stack of divorce papers in my lap, and felt something crack open inside me. Not my heart. That had broken last night at the party. This was something different. This was the illusion I'd been living in, shattering into pieces I could finally see clearly. He hadn't just humiliated me last night on impulse. This was planned, calculated. He'd been setting this up for months. I thought about Amber's pregnant belly, about how far along she looked. 7 months maybe? 8. I counted backwards. If she was 8 months pregnant, she'd conceived in January, maybe late December. I'd gotten pregnant in June. I picked up my phone and pulled up Derek's social media. He barely used it, but he was tagged in photos sometimes. I scrolled back to December. There was a company holiday party. I'd been sick that week with the flu, hadn't gone. There was Derek in a photo with a group of coworkers. And there, standing close to him, laughing at something, was Amber. I kept scrolling. Another photo from January, a team lunch. Amber was there. February, a client dinner. Amber was there too. How long had this been going on? I opened his desk drawer again, looking for anything else. That's when I found his old phone, the one he'd replaced 6 months ago. He must have forgotten it was in here. I plugged it in. It took a minute to charge enough to turn on. When it did, I went straight to his messages. The first conversation I opened was with someone named Brad, the same Brad who'd laughed at the party. Derek. She's suffocating me, man. I can't breathe in my own house. Brad. Time to move on? Derek. Been thinking about it. Amber's making it hard to focus on anything else. The date was from February. I kept reading. Derek. Claire will make this difficult. She's got nothing else. No job, no friends really. I'm all she has. Brad. That's not your problem. You can't stay in a dead marriage out of guilt. Derek. She's going to be devastated. Brad. Better than wasting more years, right? I scrolled down further. Derek. She told me she's pregnant. Brad. Oh shit. Yours? Derek. Has to be. But honestly, I don't know how it happened. We barely even... Brad. Maybe it's not. Derek. I thought about that, but I can't exactly ask for a paternity test right now. Brad. What are you going to do? Derek. Amber's pregnant too. Due in September. At least that one I know is mine. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, forcing myself to keep reading. Brad. You sure about that? Derek. Amber wouldn't lie to me. I almost laughed. Almost. I put the phone down and walked to the bathroom. I needed to throw up, but nothing came. I just stood there, gripping the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman? When had I become someone whose husband questioned whether her baby was even his? When had I become so small, so invisible, that my own marriage had ended and I was the last to know? I went back to the office. There was still one more file I hadn't looked at. The personal one. Inside were photos. Old ones from our dating days, our wedding. Some pictures of his mother, his father before he passed away. And at the bottom, a stack of letters. I picked up the first one. It was from his mother, Patricia, dated from 4 years ago. Derek, you know I love Claire, but she's not who we thought she'd be for you. She's so ordinary, darling. You deserve someone with more ambition, more presence. Someone who can match your success, not hold you back from it. I read 3 more letters, all variations on the same theme. Patricia gently, persistently, telling her son that he'd made a mistake marrying me. I put the letters back and closed the file. I felt numb, beyond anger, beyond hurt. I felt like I was looking at my entire life from outside, seeing it for what it really was. A fiction I'd been living in. A role I'd played so well, I'd forgotten it wasn't real. I was putting everything back in the filing cabinet when I saw it, stuck between 2 folders in the back of the drawer. A receipt, Riverside Fertility Center, from 3 years ago. The same month Derek had gotten his promotion. The same month he'd asked me to quit my job. The receipt was for a consultation. And below that, another charge, for a semen analysis. I pulled out my laptop and typed the clinic's name into Google. Their website loaded. Services offered: fertility consultations, IVF, egg freezing, genetic counseling, male fertility testing. I clicked on the male fertility testing page. It explained the procedure, what the test measured, what different results meant. Then I saw the statistics. Normal sperm count, 15 million to 200 million sperm per milliliter. Low count, below 15 million. Severe oligospermia, less than 1 million. And there at the bottom, almost as a footnote, men with sperm counts below 1 million per milliliter have less than a 2% chance of conceiving naturally. My phone was in my hand before I'd even decided to make the call. I dialed the clinic. Riverside Fertility Center. How can I help you? Hi, my name is Claire Mitchell. My husband Derek had some testing done there a few years ago. I'm trying to get copies of his results for our insurance. I'll need to transfer you to our records department. 3 transfers, and 10 minutes later, I had what I needed. They couldn't give me the actual results over the phone, but they could confirm that Derek Mitchell had been a patient and that he could request his records through their online portal. I hung up and stared at that receipt again. 3 years ago, right when he'd asked me to quit my job, right when he'd started pushing so hard for us to have a baby. If Derek had fertility issues, serious ones, how did Amber get pregnant? And more importantly, how did I? The baby kicked. Hard, like she was reminding me she was real. I put my hand on my belly. I know you're real, I whispered. I know you're mine. The question was, did Derek believe that? My phone buzzed. A text message. Finally, from Derek. I'll be by tomorrow to pick up some things. We need to talk. I read it 3 times. We need to talk. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I messed up. Just, we need to talk. I looked around his office at all the evidence I'd found. The divorce papers, the emptied bank account, the messages with Brad, the fertility clinic receipt. And I understood something then. Something that made everything clear. Derek didn't know I knew any of this. He thought I was still the Claire from yesterday morning. The one who believed in him. The one who'd given up everything. The one who'd stay quiet. I picked up my phone and typed back. Okay. 1 word. That's all I gave him. Then I took photos of every document in his office. The divorce papers, the bank statements, the messages on his old phone. I uploaded them all to a cloud storage account he didn't know about, an old one from my marketing job that I'd never closed. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the office door, and returned the key to its hiding place. Derek had planned this, had laid groundwork for months, had thought through his strategy, protected his assets, built his narrative. He'd made one mistake, though. He'd assumed I'd never fight back. Derek came home the next afternoon while I was folding laundry in the living room. I heard his key in the lock, and my whole body tensed, but I kept folding. A pair of his socks. One of my maternity shirts. The mundane task kept my hands busy. He walked in carrying an overnight bag. His hair was messier than usual, and he was wearing the same clothes from the party. He looked tired. Good, I thought. I hoped he hadn't slept. Claire, he said. Just my name, not an apology, not an explanation. I set down the shirt I was folding and looked at him. Really looked at him. How had I ever thought those blue eyes were kind? You wanted to talk, I said. He set his bag down and sat on the armchair across from me, not next to me on the couch where he used to sit. The distance felt deliberate. I handled last night poorly, he started. Handled it poorly. Like he'd made a small social mistake. Like he hadn't destroyed me in front of 80 people. Okay, I said. He seemed thrown by my calm. He'd probably expected tears, yelling, something he could use against me later. Amber and I, he continued, it just happened. I didn't plan it. But Claire, you have to understand. We've been drifting apart for years. You must have felt it too. I folded another shirt. Have we? You know we have. Ever since you stopped working, you've become so dependent. It's like you've lost yourself. I fell in love with someone ambitious, driven. And now, all you do is stay home. The words should have hurt. Maybe they would have yesterday. But today, they just sounded hollow, practiced. You asked me to quit my job, I said quietly. I asked you to be supportive of my career. You chose to interpret that as quitting yours. I almost admired the skill of it. The way he was rewriting history, making my sacrifice into my failure. What about the baby? I asked, my hand going to my belly. Something flickered across his face. We'll work something out. I'm not going to abandon my responsibilities. Responsibilities. Not daughter, not our child. Responsibilities. And Amber's baby? That's different. That's my son. You're sure? His eyes narrowed slightly. Of course I'm sure. Why wouldn't I be? I shrugged. You weren't sure about mine. The silence stretched between us. I watched him process what I just said, trying to figure out how I knew. I never said that, he finally replied. You told Brad you didn't know how it happened, that we barely even... I trailed off, letting him fill in the blanks. His face went pale. You went through my phone? Your old phone, the one you left in your office. He stood up, angry now. You had no right. I had every right. You're my husband. Or you were, until you decided to humiliate me in public and move on to your secretary. Don't make this about rights, Claire. You're just upset because you're finally facing the truth. This marriage has been over for a long time. We both know it. Is that what you tell yourself? He grabbed his overnight bag. I'm going to pack some more things. I'll stay at a hotel until we figure out arrangements. What arrangements? For the divorce, for dividing assets, for your future. My future. Like he was doing me a favor. He went upstairs and I heard him moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers, the closet. I stayed on the couch, folding laundry, my mind working through everything I knew. Derek came down 20 minutes later with a large suitcase. I'll be in touch through my lawyer. You already have a lawyer? He paused at the door. I've been consulting with someone, just to understand my options. For how long? That's not relevant. How long, Derek? A few months. Look, this isn't easy for me either. When did you find out about Amber's pregnancy? What? When did she tell you she was pregnant? He shifted the suitcase to his other hand. Why does that matter? Just curious. 3 months ago. She told me 3 months ago. That would make her 6 months pregnant. But she looked further along than that. I'd been around enough pregnant women to know. And you believed right away that it was yours? Why wouldn't I? I almost told him then. Almost showed him what I'd found. But something stopped me. Some instinct that said, not yet. No reason, I said. He left without saying goodbye. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, listening to the silence. Then I picked up my phone and called Jennifer. Can you recommend a good private investigator? She didn't ask questions. She just gave me a name. Thomas Reeves. He's expensive but discreet. Tell him I referred you. I called Thomas Reeves that same afternoon. His office was in a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. The waiting room was small, just a couple of chairs and a water cooler. A woman at the front desk asked me to wait. 5 minutes later, a man in his 50s came out. He was average height, gray hair, wearing khakis, and a button-down shirt. He looked like someone's uncle. Nothing about him said private investigator. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Thomas Reeves. His office was cluttered but organized. Files stacked neatly, a computer on the desk, photographs pinned to a corkboard. He gestured for me to sit. Jennifer spoke highly of you, I started. She's a good friend. Now, what can I help you with? I took a breath. My husband is having an affair with his secretary. She's pregnant. He claims the baby is his. Thomas pulled out a notepad. But you don't think it is? I found a receipt from a fertility clinic from 3 years ago. I think he might have fertility issues he never told me about. And you want me to verify that? I want you to find out the truth about the fertility clinic, about his relationship with Amber, about whether the baby could actually be his. Thomas wrote something down. That's going to require some surveillance. Medical records will be difficult, but I have some contacts. It won't be cheap. I don't care about the cost. He looked up at me. Most people say that, until they get the bill. I have money of my own, savings from before I got married. It's in an account he doesn't know about. That wasn't entirely true. I had some savings, but not much. I'd need to be careful. But Thomas didn't need to know that. Okay, I'll need some information. Your husband's full name, date of birth, workplace, any regular locations he visits. I gave him everything. His office address, his gym, Patricia's address, the coffee shop he went to every morning. I gave him Amber's information too. Her full name, her address if I could find it, her social media profiles. What about the fertility clinic? I asked. Riverside Fertility Center. I'll see what I can find out. Medical records are protected, but there are ways. How long do you want me to keep surveillance? As long as it takes. Thomas nodded. I'll send you a contract and a fee schedule. I'll need a retainer up front. And Mrs. Mitchell, whatever I find, you need to be prepared for it. Sometimes the truth is worse than what you imagined. I know, but I didn't know. Not really. The first report came a week later. Thomas sent it to my secure email, the one from my old job that Derek didn't know existed. I opened it late at night, sitting at the kitchen table with chamomile tea I wasn't drinking. The report was thorough. Photos, timestamps, observations, Derek's daily routine mapped out in detail. Monday through Friday, Derek left his hotel at 7:15 a.m., stopped at the same coffee shop, arrived at his office by 8 Nautica a.m. He left most evenings between 6 hours and 7 hours p.m. On Tuesday and Thursday, he went to his gym. On Wednesday, he had dinner with Patricia. But it was the weekend that was interesting. Saturday afternoon, Derek had gone to an apartment complex in Riverside. He'd stayed there for 4 hours. The apartment belonged to Amber Chen, Unit 304. Thomas had included photos. Derek arriving, carrying grocery bags. Derek leaving, his hair wet like he'd showered. Sunday morning, Derek had gone to Riverside Fertility Center. He'd been there for 30 minutes. Then he'd driven back to Amber's apartment. Why would he go to the fertility clinic on a Sunday? I scrolled down. Thomas had included a note. Fertility clinic was closed Sunday. Subject sat in parking lot for approximately 25 minutes, then left. Possible he was meeting someone or making a call. Unable to determine purpose without audio surveillance, which would require additional legal permission. Derek had gone to a closed clinic and just sat there. That didn't make sense unless he was thinking about something, unless he was worried about something. The report continued. Thomas had managed to pull some preliminary information about the fertility clinic through public records and professional contacts. Riverside Fertility Center specialized in male infertility issues. They had a high success rate with IVF and other assisted reproductive technologies, but they also handled diagnostic testing, the kind that would tell a man whether he could father children naturally. I picked up my phone and texted Thomas. Can you find out if Amber Chen has been to this clinic? His response came 5 minutes later. We'll check. I went back to the photos. There was one of Derek and Amber together, taken through her apartment window. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on her very pregnant belly. Derek was smiling, but there was something in his expression I recognized. It was the same look he'd had when I told him I was pregnant. Not joy, worry. The second report came 3 days later. This one was thicker. Thomas had followed Amber. Her routine was different from Derek's. She worked Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Most evenings, she went straight home. She didn't go to the gym or out with friends. She was living a very quiet life for a 26-year-old. But on Monday and Wednesday evenings, something different happened. A man came to her apartment. He arrived around 7 p.m. both nights, carrying dinner. He stayed until midnight. The first time, Thomas couldn't get a good photo of his face, but the second time, he did. I stared at the image. The man was in his late 20s, dark hair, business casual clothes. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Thomas had included a note. Subject appears to be Marcus Rodriguez, age 29, works at same company as Derek Mitchell. Position, financial analyst, unable to confirm relationship status or nature of visits without additional surveillance. Marcus Rodriguez. I pulled out my laptop and searched Derek's company directory. There he was. Financial analyst, employed for 3 years. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd gone to UC Berkeley, majored in economics, and in his profile photo, he was wearing the same watch I'd seen in Thomas's surveillance photo. I went back to Thomas's report. He'd included more photos from different angles. Marcus arriving with Chinese food. Marcus leaving late at night. In one photo, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens, I could see through Amber's window. Marcus and Amber sitting close on the couch, her head on his shoulder. That wasn't how you sit with a coworker bringing you dinner. I scrolled down. Thomas had done more digging. Marcus Rodriguez had been seeing someone for the past 2 years. Social media posts showed check-ins at restaurants, couple photos from hiking trips. But all those posts stopped 8 months ago. Right around the time Amber would have gotten pregnant. I texted Thomas. Can you confirm timeline of Marcus and Amber's relationship? Need to know how long this has been going on. We'll investigate. May take a few days. I put the phone down and pressed my hands against my belly. The baby was moving. Those rolls and kicks that had become so familiar. My daughter. The daughter Derek questioned was even his. But if Derek couldn't father children, how had I gotten pregnant? I opened my laptop and went back to the Riverside Fertility Center website. I clicked through their services again, reading more carefully this time. IVF, genetic testing, fertility preservation, and then I saw something I'd missed before, a small link at the bottom of the page. For our patients, portal access. I clicked it. A login screen appeared, username and password required. I sat there staring at it. Derek was careful with his passwords. He changed them regularly, used different ones for different accounts. But there was one password he'd used for years, back when we first got married. Our wedding date plus his mother's maiden name. It was worth a try. I typed in his email address, then the password. My finger hovered over the login button. If this worked, I'd be accessing his medical records without permission. That was probably illegal, definitely unethical. But he'd planned to divorce me, drain our accounts, and take away everything while claiming I was unstable. I clicked login, the screen loaded, and I was in. Derek's patient portal opened up. On the left side was a menu. Appointments, test results, billing, messages. I clicked test results. There was only one file, dated 3 years ago. Semen analysis report. I downloaded it, opened it, and read. Sperm concentration, 0.8 million per milliliter. Normal range, 15 to 100 million. Motility, 15%. Normal range, 40-81%. Morphology, 3% normal forms. Normal range, 4 to 48%. And at the bottom, in bold, severe oligospermia. Natural conception probability, less than 2%. Patient advised to consider assisted reproductive technology or donor sperm, less than 2%. Derek had known for 3 years that he couldn't father children naturally, and he'd never told me. He'd let me think the problem was mine. Let me go through months of tracking cycles, taking ovulation tests, timing everything perfectly. While he knew the whole time it was never going to work. I scrolled down. There was a note from the doctor. Patient expressed reluctance to inform spouse of results. Recommended couples counseling and full disclosure. Patient declined follow-up appointments. Derek had been told to tell me, and he'd chosen not to. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from rage. Cold, clear rage. If Derek couldn't father children, then Amber's baby wasn't his. It couldn't be. And my baby, my daughter, the one I'd conceived naturally against all odds. I opened a calculator on my phone. Less than 2% probability, but not zero, not impossible, just extremely unlikely. Unless. I thought about Marcus, about the photos of him and Amber so comfortable together, about his social media going dark 8 months ago. What if Marcus had been with Amber longer than anyone knew? What if they'd been hiding it for years, not months? I picked up my phone and called Thomas. I need you to do something, I said when he answered. I need you to find out everything you can about Marcus Rodriguez and Amber Chen, how long they've been together, whether they were seeing each other before she started working for Derek. Everything. That's going to take time. I have time. And money. I'll find the money. I hung up and sat there in the quiet kitchen, my daughter moving inside me, Derek's medical report glowing on my laptop screen. He'd built his whole story on a lie. Amber's pregnant with his son, his real son. The implication being that mine wasn't real, wasn't his. But what if the truth was exactly the opposite? What if my daughter was his only biological child, and Amber's son belonged to someone else entirely? I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the dark street. Derek thought he'd planned everything. Thought he'd protected himself, positioned himself, controlled the narrative. But he'd forgotten something important. He'd forgotten that I was smarter than he'd given me credit for. And he'd forgotten that the truth, eventually, always comes out. Thomas's third report arrived on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks after I'd hired him. I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room for my 28-week checkup when the email came through. I opened it and started reading, barely noticing when the nurse called my name. "Mrs. Mitchell, the doctor's ready for you." I looked up, still holding my phone. "Can I have 5 more minutes?" She smiled kindly. "Of course. Just come to room 3 when you're ready." I went back to the report. Thomas had been thorough. More than thorough. Marcus Rodriguez and Amber Chen had been seeing each other for almost 2 years. Not 8 months. 2 years. Thomas had found old social media posts that Amber had archived but not deleted. Photos from a hiking trip 23 months ago. Check-ins at restaurants dating back even further. Marcus's credit card statements showed regular charges at Amber's favorite places, going back 26 months. They'd been hiding it the entire time. Why? The answer was in the next paragraph. Marcus was married when their relationship started. Separated now, but married then. His divorce had been finalized 7 months ago, right around the time Amber would have discovered she was pregnant. So Amber had gotten pregnant by her married boyfriend. And when that boyfriend's divorce went through and things got complicated, she'd found a backup plan. Derek. I scrolled down. Thomas had interviewed some people who worked at Derek's company, pretending to be conducting a routine background check. One of them, an administrative assistant named Linda, had been very chatty. "Oh, Amber's sweet," Linda had said, according to Thomas's notes. "But she's ambitious, you know? Always networking, always positioning herself. She started dating Marcus about a month after she started working here. They thought they were being discreet, but everyone knew. Then suddenly, she started hanging around Derek's office more, bringing him coffee, staying late to help with projects. We all thought she was just trying to get ahead. Guess we were right, just not in the way we expected." I read that paragraph 3 times. Amber had targeted Derek deliberately. She'd seen an opportunity and taken it. An older man, successful, lonely in his marriage. A man who wanted a child desperately, but couldn't have one naturally. A man who wouldn't question paternity because he wanted so badly to believe he could father a son. My appointment was routine. Blood pressure slightly elevated, but not dangerous. Baby measuring perfectly. Heartbeat strong and steady. Dr. Ellis, who'd been my OB for both pregnancies I'd had before I met Derek and this one, asked if everything was okay at home. "You seem stressed," she said, her hand on my arm. "More than usual for this stage." "My husband and I are separating," I said. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. "I'm sorry to hear that. Do you have support? Family? Friends?" "Some." She wrote something on her chart. "Your blood pressure concerns me. Not enough to restrict activity yet, but I want you to be careful. Reduce stress where you can. No heavy lifting, more rest. And Claire, if things get worse, I mean it. Stress can affect the baby. I know that's the last thing you want to hear right now, but you need to take care of yourself." I nodded. "I will. I want to see you in 2 weeks instead of 4, just to monitor the blood pressure." I left the doctor's office with a printout of my daughter's ultrasound and a prescription for more rest. As if rest was possible when my entire life was unraveling. But the ultrasound at least was proof. My daughter was healthy, thriving. Whatever Derek believed or didn't believe, this baby was real. She was mine. And, according to the medical evidence I'd found, she had a less than 2% chance of being his biologically. But she was here, growing, moving inside me, which meant either Derek's test results had been wrong, or I'd beaten impossible odds, or there was something else I hadn't considered yet. I drove home slowly, my mind working through possibilities. When I pulled into the driveway, there was an unfamiliar car parked on the street, a silver Mercedes with vanity plates. Patricia's car. I sat in my car for a moment, debating whether to just drive away, but this was still my house, at least for now. Patricia was sitting on the front porch when I got out of the car. She stood when she saw me, smoothing down her pale pink skirt. She was always so perfectly put together. Hair done, makeup subtle but precise, not a wrinkle in her clothes. "Claire, dear, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to talk to you." I unlocked the front door. "Come in." She followed me inside, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I didn't offer her tea or coffee. I just sat down on the couch and waited. Patricia perched on the edge of the armchair, her purse on her lap. "I've been worried about you, about this whole situation with Derek and that girl." That girl. As if Amber was some random person, not the woman carrying the grandchild Patricia was already celebrating. "Have you?" I said. "Of course. This must be very difficult for you." I watched her carefully. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she clutched her purse, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Why are you really here, Patricia?" She blinked. "I told you. I wanted to see how you were doing." "You've never cared how I was doing before." Her mouth tightened. "That's not fair, Claire. I've always tried to be welcoming to you. You've tolerated me. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment. Then she set her purse down on the table and folded her hands in her lap. "All right. You want honesty? I'm here because I'm concerned about Derek. This situation with Amber, it's not what he wants." "Not really. He's confused, making poor decisions. He seems pretty clear about what he wants. He's acting out, trying to prove something, but it's not going to end well for anyone." "Why are you telling me this?" Patricia looked at me directly for the first time. "Because I think you should consider stepping back, making this divorce easy. Let Derek have this moment, this fantasy with Amber. It won't last. It never does. And when it's over, when he realizes what a mistake he's made, he'll need somewhere to come back to." I stared at her. "You want me to make the divorce easy so Derek can come back to me when he's done with Amber? I'm thinking of you, dear. If you fight this, make it messy. He'll resent you. But if you're gracious, understanding, he'll remember that. He'll remember what a good wife you were." "I am a good wife." "Of course you are. That's exactly my point." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I made myself stay upright. "Patricia, I need you to leave." She picked up her purse, standing slowly. "I know you're upset, but think about what I said. Think about your future, about your baby's future." "My baby will be fine." "Will she? A single mother, no job, no income? Derek will fight you on support, you know. He can afford good lawyers. You can't." So there it was, the threat underneath the concern. "Thank you for stopping by," I said, walking to the door and opening it. Patricia paused in the doorway. "I've always liked you, Claire. I really have. You're just so ordinary. And Derek, he needs someone who can keep up with him, someone who can match his ambition. You never could." After she left, I stood in the entryway for a long time. My hands were shaking again. Not from fear, from clarity. Patricia knew. She had to know. About Derek's fertility issues, about the impossibility of him fathering Amber's child, about all of it. And she was here to make sure I stayed quiet. I pulled out my phone and called Thomas. "I need you to look into Patricia Mitchell," I said when he answered. "Derek's mother, I need to know if she knew about his fertility problems, if she's been involved in any of this." "That's going to be difficult. Medical information about family members, conversations between mother and son, that's all protected. Find a way, please. I'll see what I can do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my daughter doing somersaults inside me. At 2 a.m, I gave up and went downstairs to make chamomile tea. That's when I saw the light on in Derek's office. I'd locked it after I'd gone through his files. I was sure I'd locked it. But now there was a thin line of light under the door. I walked slowly toward it, my heart pounding. Had Derek come back? Was he in there right now? I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. No sound of movement, no keyboard clicking, nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. But the light was definitely on. I went to get the key from its hiding place. When I opened the door, the office was empty. The overhead light was on, but everything else looked the same as I'd left it. Desk neat, filing cabinets closed. No sign anyone had been here. Except one of the desk drawers was slightly open. The one where I'd found his old phone. I pulled it open all the way. The phone was gone. Someone had been here. Someone had taken the phone. I checked the filing cabinets. The divorce papers were still there. The medical files. Everything else looked untouched. But the phone was definitely gone. Had Derek come back for it? How would he even know I'd found it? Unless he'd been checking his office, noticed things moved slightly, realized someone had been going through his things. I locked the office again and went back upstairs. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake, that I'd gotten too comfortable, too confident in my quiet investigation. The next morning, I got a text from Derek. "We need to talk. Today. It's important." I stared at the message. He knew. He had to know I'd found something. "What time?" I texted back. "Noon. At the house." I spent the morning preparing. I went through every file Thomas had sent me, every photo, every piece of evidence. I copied everything to a flash drive and put it in my purse. Then I copied it again to a different cloud storage account just to be safe. At 11:30, I changed into real clothes, maternity jeans and a soft blue sweater. I brushed my hair, put on a little makeup. If Derek was going to confront me, I wanted to look like I had nothing to hide. He arrived at exactly noon, which was typical. Derek was always precisely on time. He came in without knocking, which I guess made sense since he still had a key. He looked different than the last time I'd seen him. More tired, older somehow. "Claire," he said, not quite friendly, not quite hostile. "You wanted to talk." He sat down at the kitchen table without being invited. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter. "I went by my office yesterday," he said. "Yep, someone had been in there." "Your office at work?" "My office here, in the house. Maybe you left something unlocked." "I always lock it. And things were moved. My filing cabinet, my desk." I didn't say anything. "Did you go through my things, Claire?" I could have lied. Probably should have lied. But I was tired of lying. Tired of pretending. "Yes." He stood up. "You had no right." "I had every right. You're my husband. This is my house, too." "What did you find?" "What do you think I found?" He ran his hand through his hair. That gesture he always made when he was stressed. "Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. You're reading things out of context." The divorce papers weren't out of context. Neither were the bank statements showing you draining our accounts. Neither were your messages to Brad about how I was suffocating you. Those were private conversations. About our marriage, which I'm a part of. He sat back down. "Okay, fine. You found the papers. You know I was planning to file. That doesn't change anything. We're still done, Claire, whether you want to accept it or not." I accept it. That surprised him. I could see it in his face. "You do?" "Of course. You humiliated me at your birthday party. You've been planning to leave me for months. You've stolen money from our joint accounts. Why would I want to stay married to you?" He looked almost relieved. "Then we can handle this civilly. My lawyer will draw up the papers. We'll divide assets fairly." "Fairly. Yes. The house will need to be sold, of course. We'll split the proceeds. I'll pay child support, but I want a paternity test before we finalize anything." And there it was, what I'd been waiting for. A paternity test. It's standard in these situations. Is it, or is it because you don't think she's yours? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You told Brad you didn't know how I got pregnant, that we barely even... I trailed off. Derek's face flushed. "That was just talk. Guy talk. It didn't mean anything." "Did you tell Amber you want a paternity test for her baby?" The flush deepened. That's different. How? Because I know that baby is mine. How do you know? Because Amber wouldn't lie to me. We have a real relationship. Not like what you and I had. The words stung, even though I'd been expecting them. Even though I knew they weren't true. When's her due date? I asked. September 15th. And when did she tell you she was pregnant? 3 months ago. Why? So she would have been about 6 months along when she told you. I guess. What's your point? My point is that you're not very good at math, Derek. He stood up again. What's that supposed to mean? It means if she's due September 15th, she conceived around December 22nd. That's more than 8 months ago, not 6. She might have been further along when she told me. I don't remember exactly. You don't remember exactly when the woman carrying your supposed son told you she was pregnant? Stop interrogating me, Claire. This isn't a trial. Not yet. He grabbed his keys off the table. I'm not doing this. My lawyer will be in touch. Derek, wait. He stopped at the door. I found the receipt from Riverside Fertility Center from 3 years ago. He went very still. I know about the test results, the semen analysis. I know about the severe oligospermia. I know you have less than a 2% chance of fathering a child naturally. He turned around slowly. His face was pale. You went through my medical records? You left the receipt in your filing cabinet. That's a violation of my privacy. That's illegal. Is it? I didn't break into anything. I used a key I found in our house to access an office in our house, containing files that were unlocked. You had no right. I had every right. You've been lying to me for 3 years. You knew you couldn't have children naturally, and you never told me. You let me think the problem was mine. You let me go through months of stress and guilt, thinking I was the reason we couldn't conceive. The doctor said it was possible. Unlikely, but possible. Less than 2%, Derek. That's what unlikely means. And yet you got pregnant. Yes, I did. Which is why I need a paternity test. Because the odds of you getting pregnant naturally with me are nearly impossible. Which means either we beat incredibly long odds, or there's another explanation. I felt like he'd slapped me. Another explanation. You think I cheated on you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need to be sure. As if you haven't been sleeping with your secretary for months. That's different. How? Because I know Amber's baby is mine. How do you know? Because she told me, and I trust her. The irony was almost funny. Derek trusted Amber, who was lying to him about everything. But he didn't trust me, the wife who'd given up everything for him. Do you ever wonder, I said quietly, how Amber got pregnant? Given that you can barely conceive naturally? We were careful most of the time, but there were a few occasions where we weren't. It only takes once. Does it? With less than 2% probability? Are you saying it's impossible? Because you're pregnant. So clearly it's possible. I'm saying it's unlikely. Very unlikely. Unlikely enough that maybe you should be asking Amber the same questions you're asking me. Amber wouldn't lie to me. Why not? What makes her so special? She loves me. She wants to be with me. She's not just staying because she has nowhere else to go. The cruelty of it took my breath away, but I didn't let him see it hurt. You're right, I said. I do have nowhere else to go. No job, no income, just a baby on the way, and a husband who doesn't believe she's even his. Claire, get out. We're not done talking about this. Yes, we are. Get out of my house. It's our house. For now. But your lawyer will be drawing up papers, right? So get out and let him do his job. Derek left. I waited until I heard his car pull away before I let myself sink down onto the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet, my hands on my belly. My daughter kicked. Strong, insistent kicks. I know, I whispered to her. I know you're real. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Found something on Patricia Mitchell. Can you meet? I pulled myself up off the floor. When? Now, if possible. This is important. I drove to Thomas's office with my mind racing. What had he found? What could Patricia possibly have done that was worse than what I already knew? Thomas was waiting when I got there. He closed the door behind me and gestured to the chair. I looked into Patricia Mitchell like you asked. It wasn't easy. Most of what I found is circumstantial. but it paints an interesting picture. He pulled out a folder and opened it. 3 years ago, right around the time Derek had his fertility testing done, Patricia was dealing with her own situation. Her late husband, Derek's father, left a substantial estate. Most of it went to Patricia, but there was a trust set up for Derek. A significant amount, around $2 million. I knew about the trust. Derek gets access to it when he turns 40. Right, but there's a condition. Derek has to have a biological heir by the time he turns 40. If he doesn't, the money goes to a children's charity instead. I stared at him. What? It's not that unusual in wealthy families. The father wanted to ensure the family line continued, so he built it into the trust. Derek needs to have a biological child by age 40, or he loses everything. When does Derek turn 40? Next year, March. The room felt too small suddenly. So Derek knew he couldn't have children naturally. And he knew if he didn't have a biological child by 40, he'd lose $2 million. That's the situation. And Patricia knew too. She had to know. She's the executor of the trust. Thomas nodded. Patricia has been very involved in making sure Derek meets that condition. I found records of conversations between her and Derek's lawyer, emails about options, suggestions about surrogacy, IVF, even adoption. Adoption wouldn't count, though. The trust specifies biological. Exactly. I sat back in the chair, my mind working through all the implications. So when I got pregnant, Derek thought he'd solved his problem. Despite the odds, despite the test results, I was pregnant. And if he could claim the baby as his, he'd meet the trust requirement. That's my read on the situation. But then Amber told him she was pregnant too, and he had to choose. Me, the wife he'd been planning to leave anyway, or Amber, the younger woman who made him feel like he could still father a son. And a son would be better for his ego than a daughter. I thought about the party, about Derek announcing Amber's pregnancy as if it was his greatest achievement, about the way he'd dismissed mine. He chose Amber because she's having a boy, because it looks better, sounds better, more impressive. Probably. But Patricia knows the truth. She knows Derek can't father children naturally, which means she knows at least one of these babies isn't his. If both pregnancies are legitimate, yes. The odds of Derek fathering 2 children naturally within months of each other, given his test results, are astronomical. So she's betting on mine being his. Because I'm his wife. Because we were trying for years. Because it makes sense that it would be mine. Or she's hoping Amber's is his, and yours isn't. And she's here to make sure you don't contest paternity. I thought about Patricia's visit, about her suggestion that I make the divorce easy, that I step back and let Derek have his moment with Amber. She's protecting Derek, making sure he gets that trust money no matter what, even if it means lying to everyone, even if it means letting him believe he fathered Amber's baby when he probably didn't. Thomas closed the folder. That's my assessment. But I can't prove Patricia is actively deceiving anyone. This is all inference based on circumstances. What about Amber? Does she know about the trust? I don't think so. I couldn't find any evidence she's aware of Derek's financial situation beyond his job. And Marcus? Definitely not. He's still in the dark about Amber and Derek entirely, as far as I can tell. I stood up and walked to the window. Thomas's office overlooked a parking lot. Below, people were going about their normal days, getting in cars, walking to lunch, living lives where everything made sense. My life had stopped making sense months ago, maybe years ago, maybe it never had. What do I do with this information? I asked. That's up to you. You could expose everything. Tell Derek about Marcus. Tell Amber about Derek's infertility. Tell Marcus about Derek and Amber. Blow the whole thing up. But that would be messy. Public. It would hurt a lot of people, including you, including your daughter. So what's the alternative? You wait. You document everything. You protect yourself legally, and you let the truth come out on its own. Because it will. These things always do. I turned away from the window and looked at Thomas. How long do I wait? As long as it takes. But I'm guessing not long. Derek is going to want that paternity test. And when he gets the results, everything changes. I drove home as the sun was setting. The sky was pink and orange, one of those beautiful California evenings that makes you think everything might be okay. But everything wasn't okay. I had a husband who'd been lying to me for years, a mother-in-law who was manipulating everyone to protect a trust fund, a pregnant mistress who was deceiving my husband with another man's baby, and me, carrying a daughter who might be the only biological heir Derek would ever have. Except Derek didn't want her, because she was a girl, because she was mine, because accepting her meant accepting me. And he'd already decided I wasn't worth keeping. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a long time. My daughter was moving, those now familiar rolls and kicks. I put my hand on my belly and felt her respond, pushing back against my palm. "I'm going to protect you," I whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I will." My phone buzzed. Another text from Derek. "My lawyer will be contacting you next week. Please cooperate with the process." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my photos and looked at my ultrasound from that morning. My daughter's profile, her tiny hands, the curve of her spine. She was real, she was healthy, and she was mine. Whatever Derek believed, whatever Patricia planned, whatever games Amber was playing, none of it mattered as much as this. I was going to be a mother, and I was going to make sure my daughter grew up knowing she was wanted, knowing she was enough, knowing she didn't need to prove anything to anyone, even if her father never believed she was his. Inside the house, I made a decision. I wasn't going to expose anyone. Not yet, not publicly. I wasn't going to confront Amber or tell Marcus or blow up Derek's world. I was going to wait, document, prepare. And when the time came, when Derek demanded his paternity test and the truth could no longer be hidden, I would already be ready. Because the thing about lies is they always unravel eventually. The bigger the lie, the more spectacular the unraveling. And this lie, this whole web of deception Patricia and Derek and Amber had built, was very big indeed. I just needed to be patient, to watch, to wait, and to make sure that when it all came crashing down, I was standing far enough away that I wouldn't get buried in the rubble. 6 weeks passed. 6 weeks of lawyer letters and doctor's appointments and sleepless nights. 6 weeks of feeling my daughter grow stronger inside me while my marriage officially died on paper. I was 32 weeks pregnant now. My back hurt constantly. My ankles were swollen. I couldn't see my feet anymore when I stood up. But my daughter was healthy. That's what mattered. Dr. Ellis was still concerned about my blood pressure, but it was manageable, as long as I avoided stress, which was impossible given the circumstances. Derek's lawyer had sent over the initial divorce papers. They were exactly what I'd expected. Derek wanted the house sold and proceeds split. He wanted a paternity test before agreeing to any child support. He wanted all financial ties severed cleanly. His lawyer had included a paragraph about my failure to maintain employment and my increasing dependence on Derek over the years. As if I'd chosen to quit my job for fun. As if I hadn't done it because he'd asked me to. My lawyer, a woman named Sandra Morrison, who Jennifer had recommended, had looked at the papers and shaken her head. "This is aggressive," she'd said. "Unnecessarily so. He's trying to paint you as helpless and dependent to minimize his support obligations. Can he do that? He can try. But we have evidence you left your career at his request. We have documentation of the joint accounts he drained. And once we get that paternity test he's demanding, we'll have proof that child is his, regardless of what he believes." I hadn't told Sandra about Derek's fertility issues. Not yet. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because once I did, there'd be no going back. The truth would be out there, official, part of the legal record. Or maybe because some part of me still hoped this would all resolve itself without me having to detonate everything. Thomas was still watching Derek and Amber. His reports came weekly now. Derek stayed at his hotel most nights. He visited Amber's apartment 3 or 4 times a week. Marcus still came by on Mondays and Wednesdays. Amber had stopped going to work. She was on maternity leave now, her due date less than 3 weeks away. Derek had stopped contacting me directly. Everything went through lawyers now, which was fine. I had nothing to say to him anyway. Then, one Wednesday morning, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Patricia. Derek would like to have a family dinner this Saturday to introduce Amber properly and discuss arrangements going forward. 6 p.m. at Belmont's. Please attend." I stared at the message for a long time. A family dinner. As if we were all just going to sit around and pretend everything was normal. As if Derek hadn't humiliated me. As if I was supposed to smile and accept his new pregnant girlfriend like some kind of modern arrangement. I should have said no. Any reasonable person would have said no. But I found myself typing back. "I'll be there." Jennifer called me as soon as I hit send, like she had some kind of sixth sense. "Please tell me you're not going to that dinner." "I'm going." "Claire, honey, why? Why would you put yourself through that?" "Because I need to see it. All of it. All of them together. Pretending like this is normal." "You don't need to see anything. You need to protect yourself and that baby." "I am protecting us. I'm just doing it my way." She sighed. "At least let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone." "I won't be alone. I'll have everyone. Derek, Patricia, Amber, probably some of Derek's friends too. A whole audience." "That's not what I mean." "I know, but I need to do this by myself." Saturday arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. I spent the morning trying to figure out what to wear. Nothing fit properly anymore. Everything was either maternity clothes that looked too casual or regular clothes that wouldn't zip. I finally settled on a black dress, simple and stretchy enough to accommodate my belly. I put on the small diamond earrings Derek had given me for our 5th anniversary. I did my makeup carefully, my hair in soft waves. I wanted to look put together, in control. Not like the desperate, dependent woman Derek's lawyer had described in those papers. The envelope was in my purse. I'd put it together the night before. Copies of Derek's fertility test results. Photos from Thomas's surveillance. The timeline showing when Amber had conceived versus when Derek could have been the father. Medical documentation about the probability of Derek fathering children naturally. Everything. All of it. Neat and organized and irrefutable. I didn't know if I'd actually give it to them. Maybe I'd just sit through the dinner, smile politely, and leave. Maybe having it with me was enough, a security blanket made of evidence. Or maybe I'd burn it all down. I hadn't decided yet. Belmont's was a nice restaurant, the kind of place with white tablecloths and wine lists and servers who called you ma'am. Derek had taken me there for our anniversary once, years ago, before he decided I wasn't worth the effort. The hostess led me to a private room in the back. I could hear voices as we approached. Patricia's laugh. Derek's voice, lower and more serious. Someone else I didn't recognize. When I walked in, the conversation stopped. Derek was there, standing near the head of the table in a navy suit. Patricia sat to his right, wearing cream-colored silk. Amber was across from Patricia, her belly huge under a tight red dress, her hair perfectly styled. And there were 2 other people I didn't know. A couple in their 40s, both dressed expensively, both looking uncomfortable. "Claire," Derek said. He sounded surprised, like he hadn't expected me to actually show up. "Derek." Patricia stood and came over to me, her smile bright and fake. "Claire, dear, I'm so glad you could make it. Come sit down." She gestured to a chair at the far end of the table, as far from Derek as possible, naturally. I sat down slowly, my back protesting. The baby was sitting low now, pressing on everything, making it hard to get comfortable. I adjusted the chair and folded my hands on the table. "Claire, these are the Hendersons," Patricia said, gesturing to the uncomfortable couple. "Paul and Margaret, old friends of the family." They nodded at me. Margaret's eyes went to my belly, then quickly away. Like pregnancy was contagious. "And of course you know Amber," Patricia continued. Amber smiled at me. It wasn't a cruel smile, just confident, comfortable. She thought she'd won. "Hi, Claire," she said. Her voice was sweet, young. "Thanks for coming. I know this must be weird for you." Weird. That was one word for it. A server came in and took drink orders. I asked for water. Everyone else ordered wine except Amber, who got sparkling cider. We're celebrating, she explained, her hand on her belly. Derek Jr. is almost here. Derek Jr., she'd already named the baby after him. My stomach turned. Derek cleared his throat. I wanted to have this dinner so we could all move forward as adults. Claire, I know the divorce has been difficult, but Amber and I want to make this transition as smooth as possible. Do you? I said. Of course. We're not trying to make things harder for you. We just want to be honest about where things stand. Where do things stand? Amber and I are going to get married after the baby is born, once the divorce is finalized. Congratulations. He blinked. He'd been expecting anger, tears, something he could use to prove I was unstable. Thank you, Amber said when Derek didn't respond. We're really excited, and we want you to know you'll always be a part of Derek's life. We're not trying to replace you or anything. Replace me, as if I was a piece of furniture. That's very generous, I said. The server brought our drinks. I sipped my water and watched them all. Derek kept glancing at me, like he was trying to figure out what I was thinking. Patricia was watching me too, that calculating look in her eyes. The Hendersons were studying their menus like they contained the secrets of the universe. So Claire, Margaret Henderson said, clearly trying to fill the awkward silence. When are you due? 8 weeks. Oh, how exciting. You're first? Yes. Girl or boy? Girl. Oh, that's lovely. Derek must be thrilled. The room went silent again. I'm sure he is, I said. Derek shifted in his seat. Claire and I are still working out the details, but yes, I'm happy for her. Happy for me. Like the baby had nothing to do with him. Actually, Derek continued, that's part of what I wanted to discuss tonight. The paternity situation. Derek, Patricia said quickly, perhaps this isn't the time. No, it's fine, Haram, he said. We're all adults here. Claire, I've asked my lawyer to arrange for a paternity test after the baby is born. I think it's important we establish legal parentage clearly. You think my daughter might not be yours? I didn't say that. You just said you want a paternity test to establish legal parentage, which means you doubt she's yours. I just want to be sure, for everyone's sake. Whose sake? Yours? Mine? The baby's? All of us. I took another sip of water. My hands were steady. And if the test shows she is yours, then I'll fulfill my obligations. Child support, visitation, everything that's standard. How generous. Claire, don't be like this. Like what? Difficult. Emotional? I'm trying to handle this rationally. Rationally, I repeated. You want to test my daughter's paternity because you rationally believe I might have cheated on you, even though you're the one who's been sleeping with your secretary for months. That's different. How? Because I know Amber's baby is mine. There's no question. Amber reached over and squeezed his hand. We're a family, she said softly. I looked at their hands together on the table. His wedding ring was gone. I hadn't noticed that before. The server came back to take our dinner orders. I ordered the salmon. I wasn't hungry, but I needed something to do with my hands. Everyone else ordered. The server left. There's something else, Derek said. I wanted everyone here to witness this. He pulled out a folder from beside his chair. These are the final divorce papers. Everything's been agreed to by the lawyers. The house will be sold, assets divided. I just need your signature. He slid the papers across the table to me. I looked at them but didn't pick them up. You want me to sign these now? Here? I thought it would be easier. Get it done. Move forward. In front of everyone. Yes. So there's no confusion about where we stand. Patricia leaned forward. Claire, dear, Derek is trying to be considerate, to give you closure. Closure. They wanted me to sign away my marriage in a restaurant, in front of strangers, while 8 months pregnant. I picked up the papers and flipped through them slowly. Everything was there, just like my lawyer had described. The house, the accounts, the car, child support pending paternity confirmation. There's a lot here, I said. Your lawyer reviewed it all. There shouldn't be any surprises. Oh, there are always surprises, I said. I set the papers down and reached into my purse. My fingers found the envelope, the one I'd brought just in case. Everyone was watching me, waiting to see if I'd sign, if I'd accept my dismissal gracefully. I pulled out the envelope and set it on the table. Before I sign anything, I said quietly. I think you should see this. Derek frowned. What is that? Information about paternity. Claire, if this is some attempt to prove the baby is mine before the test, I'm not interested in emotional arguments. It's not emotional, it's medical. I pushed the envelope toward him. Open it. He looked at Patricia. She shrugged slightly. He picked up the envelope and opened it. I watched his face as he pulled out the papers. First confusion, then recognition, then shock. Where did you get this? His voice was barely above a whisper. From your filing cabinet, the fertility clinic receipt. It wasn't hard to track down the actual results. He was staring at the semen analysis report. The one showing his sperm count was less than 1 million per milliliter. The one saying he had less than a 2% chance of natural conception. This is private medical information. You left it in an unlocked filing cabinet in our house. Patricia grabbed the papers from him. Her face went white as she read. Derek, she said, tell me this is old. Tell me this isn't current. It's from 3 years ago, he said. And you never retested? Never followed up? No. Amber was looking between them, confused. What's going on? What is that? Derek didn't answer. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the next set of papers. These are photos, I said, sliding them across the table. From a private investigator, surveillance photos. Amber picked them up. Her face went from confused to pale to red in about 10 seconds. The photos showed her and Marcus. At her apartment, at dinner, getting into his car. One particularly clear shot of them kissing in her doorway. Who is this? Derek asked, grabbing the photos. That's Marcus Rodriguez, I said. He works at your company, financial analyst. He and Amber have been seeing each other for about 2 years. That's not true, Amber said quickly, too quickly. The photos are dated. The investigator has detailed logs, including the fact that Marcus visits your apartment every Monday and Wednesday, has been for months. Derek was staring at Amber. You said you weren't seeing anyone else. You said it was just us. It is just us. That's Marcus. He's just a friend. Friends don't kiss like that. Derek, let me explain. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the last set of papers. This is a timeline, I said, based on Amber's due date and medical information about pregnancy dating. If she's due September 15th, she conceived around December 22nd. Derek, where were you the week of December 20th? He was still staring at Amber. What? Where were you the week before Christmas? Check your calendar. He pulled out his phone. Scrolled. His face went even paler. I was in Seattle for the medical device conference. I was gone for 5 days. So you couldn't have been with Amber during her conception window. But we'd been together before that, in November. Pregnancy doesn't work that way. Conception happens during a very specific window. And you weren't there. Amber stood up suddenly. This is crazy. You're making things up because you're jealous. Am I? Then let's talk about probability. Derek has severe oligospermia. Less than 2% chance of natural conception. Yet he supposedly got 2 women pregnant naturally within months of each other? What are the odds of that? Derek was looking at the medical report again. This can't be right. It's right, Patricia said quietly. She'd been very quiet since seeing the papers. I knew about the test. Your father's trust. The biological heir requirement. We discussed options. You knew? Derek turned to her. Of course I knew. You came to me 3 years ago, terrified you'd lose the inheritance. We talked about IVF, surrogacy, other possibilities. And you didn't think to tell me you'd been hiding medical information from my wife? Derek's voice was rising now. That was your choice, your medical privacy? You let me think I could still have children naturally. You let me think... He stopped, looked at me. If I can't have children naturally, then how did you get pregnant? It was the question I'd been waiting for, the one I'd been dreading. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe we beat the odds. Maybe your test results were wrong. Maybe it was a miracle. But she's yours, Derek. The only question is whether you'll ever believe that. Amber was crying now, makeup running down her face. Derek, please, let me explain. Is the baby mine? His voice was flat, cold. I thought he was. I really thought, is the baby mine? She looked down. I don't know. The silence in that room was absolute. Even the Hendersons had stopped pretending to look at their phones. Derek stood up slowly. He looked at me. You knew all this. For how long? A few weeks. And you didn't tell me. Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of lying to manipulate you? He didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. You came here tonight planning to destroy everything, he said. No, I came here tonight planning to sit through dinner and go home. But then you asked me to sign divorce papers in front of strangers. You announced you were naming another woman's baby after yourself. You told me you wanted a paternity test for my daughter. So I decided maybe it was time everyone knew the truth. I stood up, my hand going to my belly. The baby was moving, probably disturbed by my elevated heart rate. You were right about one thing, Derek. A baby won't make me stay with you, but my baby will grow up far away from this family of liars. I picked up my purse. Patricia stood too. Claire, wait, we can discuss this rationally. Rationally? Like how you rationally manipulated your son into thinking he needed to produce an heir to get his inheritance? Like how you rationally watched him live a lie for 3 years? I was protecting him. You were protecting money. There's a difference. I walked toward the door. Derek was still standing there, staring at the papers on the table like they were written in a language he didn't understand. Claire, he said. I stopped but didn't turn around. Is she really mine? I looked back at him then. This man I'd loved. This man I'd given up everything for. This man who'd questioned my daughter's paternity while celebrating a child that probably wasn't his. I don't know, Derek. I honestly don't know. Your medical report says it's almost impossible. But here I am, 8 months pregnant. So either I cheated on you, which I didn't, or we beat impossible odds. Or maybe your test results were wrong. Or maybe, I paused, maybe I'm the only one carrying your biological child and you're too blind to see it. I walked out of that private room into the main restaurant. People were eating dinner, laughing, having normal conversations, living normal lives. I made it to my car before the shaking started. My hands on the steering wheel, my whole body trembling. Not from fear, not from anger, from relief. I'd done it. I'd told the truth. I'd stopped being quiet. I'd stopped protecting people who'd never protected me. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. How are you? I typed back with shaking fingers. I'm free. And I was. For the first time in years, I was completely free. I drove home slowly, my hands steady on the wheel by the time I pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as always, but I didn't feel the same walking into it. I felt lighter, unburdened, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Inside, I made chamomile tea. I wouldn't drink and sat in the living room with my hand on my belly. The baby was moving less frantically now, settling down. It's okay, I whispered to her. We're okay. My phone rang. Derek's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Patricia's number. Voicemail. Again. Amber's number. Voicemail. I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet house. Tomorrow, I'd deal with the fallout. Tomorrow, I'd talk to my lawyer, make plans, figure out the next steps. But tonight, I just sat in the silence. The good kind of silence. The kind that comes after you finally said everything you needed to say. The kind that comes after you stop apologizing for taking up space. The kind that comes after you remember who you were before you let someone else define you. I looked around the living room at all the things I'd chosen, all the compromises I'd made, all the pieces of myself I'd given away thinking it would make someone love me more. None of it had worked. None of it had mattered. But my daughter mattered. And I mattered. And that was enough. It was more than enough. I finished my tea, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No nightmares, no anxiety, no questions, just peace. And in the morning, I'd wake up and start building the life I should have had all along. The life where I wasn't someone's convenient wife or disappointing daughter-in-law or questioned mother. Just me, just Claire. And that would be everything. 8 months later, I woke up to the sound of Emma crying. Not the desperate newborn cry she'd had those first few weeks, but her hungry cry. The one that said she was awake and ready to eat and would tolerate exactly 0 delays. I rolled out of bed, my body moving automatically now. No more pregnancy aches. No more swollen ankles. Just the tired muscles of a mother who hadn't slept more than 4 hours straight in 2 months. But I wasn't complaining. Emma's nursery was painted a soft yellow. I'd done it myself, slowly, carefully, in the weeks after I'd moved into this apartment. The one in Lakewood, 20 minutes from my old house, but a lifetime away from my old life. She was in her crib, fists waving, her face scrunched up in that expression that meant she'd moved past patient and was approaching angry. I know, I said, lifting her up. You're starving, absolutely wasting away. She was 7 pounds and 3 ounces when she was born. Now, at 8 weeks old, she was almost 11 pounds. Round cheeks, rolls on her thighs, my mother's eyes looking back at me. I settled into the rocking chair and started feeding her. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of her eating and the hum of traffic outside. It was a small place. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. Nothing like the house I'd lived in with Derek. But it was mine. Really mine. My name on the lease. My furniture, picked out slowly from secondhand stores and online marketplaces. My choices in every room. The yellow nursery, the blue couch in the living room, the herbs growing in pots on the kitchen windowsill, the photographs on the walls, mostly of Emma, but some of me and Jennifer, me and my old co-workers from the marketing firm, me alone on the day I moved in, holding my pregnant belly and smiling. I looked different in that photo. Tired but determined, scared but standing up straight. Emma finished eating and I held her against my shoulder, patting her back until she burped. She was already falling back asleep, her little body heavy and warm against mine. I should have put her back in the crib, should have tried to get another hour of sleep myself. But instead, I just sat there, holding her, breathing in that baby smell that everyone talks about, but you can't really understand until you experience it. My phone buzzed on the side table. A text from Jennifer. Coffee this morning? I can pick up. I texted back with one hand. Come by at 10. Bring decaf. Still nursing? For now. You're a saint. I smiled. I wasn't a saint. I was just a mother, doing what mothers do, figuring it out as I went along. Emma was fully asleep now. I carried her back to the crib and laid her down carefully. She didn't even stir. 8 weeks old, and she was already sleeping better than I was. I went to the kitchen and started the coffee maker. Real coffee for me this morning. I'd earned it. While it brewed, I checked my email. There were 3 new messages from potential clients. I'd started taking on freelance marketing projects again about a month ago. Small things at first. A logo design for a local bakery. Social media strategy for a yoga studio. But word was spreading. I was good at my job. I'd forgotten that about myself, but it was coming back. There was also an email from Sandra, my lawyer. The subject line said, "Final decree." I opened it. The divorce was finalized. Official. Derek Mitchell and Claire Mitchell were no longer married. 8 years together, ended with a digital signature and a judge's approval. Sandra had attached the final decree. I skimmed through it. The house had sold 3 months ago. I'd gotten my half of the proceeds, plus a settlement for the money Derek had drained from our joint accounts. It was enough to live on for a while, especially with the freelance income starting to come in. Child support was still being sorted out. That was the complicated part, because of the paternity test. Derek had insisted on it, of course. Had his lawyer filed the motion before Emma was even born. So 2 weeks after I'd given birth, still bleeding, still exhausted, still trying to figure out how to keep a tiny human alive, I'd had to go to a clinic and have Emma's cheek swabbed. Derek had been there. We'd barely looked at each other. He'd glanced at Emma once, quickly, like he was afraid to look too long. Then he'd signed his paperwork and left. The results had come back 3 weeks later. Probability of paternity: 99.97%. Emma was his daughter. Biologically, legally, irrefutably his. I'd gotten the results in the mail, that official-looking envelope with the lab logo. I'd stood in my kitchen, holding my 6-week-old daughter, reading that number over and over. 99.97%. Against all odds, against medical probability, against Derek's test results showing less than 2% chance of natural conception. We'd beaten the odds, or the test results had been wrong, or something else had happened that nobody could explain. But the truth was clear. Emma was Derek's daughter, the only biological child he'd ever have, most likely, and he still barely acknowledged her. After the results came through, Sandra had pushed for formal child support. Derek's lawyer had dragged it out, arguing about amounts, about visitation, about every detail they could find to delay. Derek hadn't asked to see Emma, not once in 8 weeks. I poured my coffee and sat at the small kitchen table. Through the window, I could see the little garden area behind the apartment building. Someone had planted flowers there, bright yellow ones that reminded me of Emma's nursery. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but it was local. "Hello? Claire, it's Marcus Rodriguez?" I sat up straighter. Marcus. Amber's Marcus. The father of Amber's baby. "Marcus, hi. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from..." "Well, it doesn't matter. I wanted to talk to you, if you have time." "About what?" "About everything. About Derek and Amber and what happened. I know it's been months, but I feel like I owe you an apology. Or an explanation. Or something." I took a sip of coffee. "You don't owe me anything." "I feel like I do. Can we meet? Just for coffee?" "I promise I'm not trying to cause more drama. I need to talk to someone who understands what it was like. Being lied to." I thought about saying no, about keeping that door closed. But something in his voice stopped me. "Okay, there's a coffee shop on Maple Street, Brew Haven. Do you know it? I can find it. 11 tomorrow morning? I'll be there." After we hung up, I sat with my coffee for a long time, thinking about what Marcus might want to say, what explanations he thought he needed to give. Jennifer arrived at 10 with decaf lattes and bagels. She took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" "Marcus Rodriguez called, Amber's boyfriend, the father of her baby. The one Derek didn't know about, that one." "What did he want?" "To talk, about everything." I said yes. Jennifer set the coffee down and looked at me seriously. "Are you sure that's a good idea? These people brought enough chaos into your life already." "He's not these people. He was lied to just like I was. Maybe even worse. At least I found out the truth. He spent months not knowing Amber was sleeping with my husband." "Your ex-husband?" "Right, my ex-husband." Jennifer handed me a bagel. "Okay, but I'm going with you." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You went to that nightmare dinner alone. You're not doing this alone too." I smiled. "Thank you." Emma started crying again. Jennifer was up immediately. "I'll get her. You eat." She came back a minute later with Emma in her arms, cooing at her. Jennifer was a natural with babies. She had 3 of her own, all teenagers now, but she remembered how to hold a newborn like it was yesterday. "She looks like you," Jennifer said. "Same nose, same expression when she's thinking. She has Derek's eyes. She has your strength, I can already tell." Emma yawned, her tiny mouth opening wide. Jennifer laughed. "Okay, maybe she has his dramatic tendencies too." We spent the morning like that, talking about nothing important, about Emma's sleep schedule and Jennifer's kids and the new grocery store that opened down the street. Normal things. The kind of things I used to think were boring, but now seem precious. This was my life now. Small and quiet and ordinary. And I loved it. The next morning, Jennifer picked me up at 10:30. Emma was with me in her car seat, sleeping peacefully. I'd thought about leaving her home, getting a sitter, but I wanted Marcus to see her. Wanted him to see what was real in all of this mess. Brew Haven was busy with the late morning crowd. Young mothers with strollers. People working on laptops. the smell of coffee and fresh pastries. Marcus was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when he saw us, uncertain. He looked different than in the surveillance photos Thomas had taken. Tired, older. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Claire," he said, "thank you for coming. And you brought..." He looked at Emma. "This is Emma. And this is my friend Jennifer." We sat down. Marcus kept glancing at Emma, then looking away, like he didn't know if it was okay to look. "She's beautiful," he finally said. "Thank you." A server came over and we ordered coffee. The small talk was awkward. Marcus asked about Emma, how old she was, if she was sleeping well. I answered briefly. Then silence. Finally, Marcus took a breath. "I don't know how to start this." "Start with the truth," I said. "That usually works." He smiled slightly. "The truth." "Okay." He folded his hands on the table. "I met Amber about 2 years ago. I was still married then, separated, but not divorced yet. It was complicated. It always is. We kept it quiet at work. We thought we were being discreet, but I guess people knew anyway." He paused. "When Amber told me she was pregnant, I panicked. My divorce wasn't finalized. I had a daughter from my marriage who was struggling with the separation. I told Amber I needed time to figure things out. And she didn't want to wait. She said she understood. Said she'd handle it. I thought she meant she'd wait. Or maybe..." He stopped. "Maybe she'd terminate. I don't know. I wasn't proud of how I handled it. I was scared and selfish, and I basically disappeared on her for a few weeks. And when you came back, she told me she was with Derek, that he knew about the baby and wanted to be involved. She said it was better this way, cleaner, that Derek could give her stability I couldn't. Did you believe her?" I wanted to. It was easier than taking responsibility. So I told myself she'd moved on, that the baby wasn't mine anyway. Even though I knew the timing didn't work. Even though I knew Derek couldn't have been there for the conception. "How did you know that?" I remembered. Derek was at that conference in Seattle in December. Amber had been upset about it, said she'd wanted them to spend the holidays together. But I was there too, in Seattle. Different conference, same hotel. I stared at him. "You were in Seattle?" "Yeah, I saw Derek actually, in the hotel bar one night. We didn't talk, just nodded at each other. Professional courtesy." "So you knew he couldn't have gotten Amber pregnant?" "I knew it was possible, but unlikely. But I convinced myself I was wrong about the timing. That maybe she'd conceived earlier or later than I thought. I convinced myself because I wanted to." Emma stirred in her car seat. I reached down and rocked it gently. She settled. "When did you find out the truth?" I asked. "That night, the dinner. Amber called me afterward, hysterical. Said everything had fallen apart. Said you'd exposed her with photos and timelines. Said Derek had thrown her out." "He threw her out?" "Not literally, but he ended it. Right there in the restaurant after you left. Told her to get out, that he never wanted to see her again. She called me from the parking lot." I tried to imagine that scene. Derek, furious and humiliated. Amber, pregnant and desperate. The Hendersons probably sneaking out as fast as they could. "What did you do?" "I went to her. We talked all night. She admitted everything. That she'd gotten pregnant by me, that she'd been scared, that she'd seen Derek as a solution. She said she never meant to hurt anyone. But she did. She did," he agreed quietly. "She hurt all of us. You most of all." "What happened after that night?" "Amber and I tried to figure things out. I moved in with her. My divorce finalized a few weeks later. And when the baby was born..." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. A baby boy. Dark hair, Marcus's eyes. His name is Leo. He's 3 months old now. He's beautiful. He looks like my father. Marcus put the phone away. "Amber and I are trying to make it work. For Leo. But it's hard. There's so much damage. So much lying. I don't know if we'll make it." "Do you love her?" He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. I love my son. And I want to be there for him. But Amber, I don't know if I can trust her again. That's honest. I'm trying to be, for the first time in a long time. He looked at Emma. Derek doesn't see her? No. That's his loss. I know. The paternity test came back positive, right? I heard through people at work? Yes. Emma is Derek's daughter, biologically confirmed. So he has a child. An actual biological child. After everything. And he's not even acknowledging her. He's paying child support, through lawyers. But he hasn't asked to meet her. Hasn't called or texted or sent a gift. Nothing. Marcus shook his head. I don't understand that. How do you have a daughter and just ignore her existence? You'd have to ask Derek. Does it bother you that he's not involved? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. It used to. When I was pregnant, I wanted Emma to have a father. I wanted her to have the family I'd imagined. But now I think she's better off without him. She'll have people who love her. Me, Jennifer, my friends. People who chose to be in her life, not people who were obligated to be. Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. Marcus nodded. That makes sense. Leah will have that too. Me, Amber, whatever happens between us. My daughter from my first marriage, she's excited to be a big sister. Family doesn't have to look traditional to be real. No, it doesn't. We talked for another half hour. About practical things. About how Marcus was handling work now that everyone knew about the affair. About how Amber was doing as a new mother. About the awkwardness of running into Derek in the office. He's actually leaving, Marcus said. Derek. He put in his notice last week, taking a job in Denver, starting next month. Denver. Across the country. As far from us as he could get without leaving the continental United States. How do you feel about that? Jennifer asked me. Relieved, I said honestly. It'll be easier. Not having to worry about running into him at the grocery store or seeing his car around town. Emma woke up and started fussing. I picked her up, holding her against my shoulder. Marcus watched us. She really does look like you. Thank you. I'm glad I called. I'm glad we talked. Me too. If you ever need anything, or if Leo and Emma want to meet someday when they're older, just let me know. I will. We said goodbye outside the coffee shop. Marcus hugged Jennifer, then hesitated before hugging me too. It was brief, awkward, but genuine. After he drove away, Jennifer and I stood in the parking lot. Emma was alert now, looking around at the world with those serious eyes. How do you feel? Jennifer asked. Okay, actually, okay. He seems like he's trying. He is, more than Derek ever did. We got in the car. Jennifer drove us back to my apartment. As we pulled up, I saw a package on my doorstep. Did you order something? Jennifer asked. No. She parked, and I got Emma out of the car seat. The package was small, wrapped in brown paper with my name written on it in handwriting I recognized. Patricia's handwriting. Want me to open it? Jennifer asked. No, I'll do it. Inside, I set Emma in her bouncer and opened the package carefully. Inside was a box. Inside the box was a silver frame with a photo of Derek as a baby and a note. Claire, I wanted Emma to have this, so she knows where she came from. Whatever happened between you and Derek, she deserves to know her father, even if he's too foolish to know her. Patricia. I stared at the photo for a long time. Baby Derek looked a lot like Emma. Same serious expression. Same eyes. What does it say? Jennifer asked. I handed her the note. She read it and made a disgusted sound. She has some nerve, after everything. She's trying to make amends, in her way. By sending a photo, not by telling her son to step up and be a father. Patricia can't make Derek do anything. He's a grown man making his own choices. Bad choices. Yes. But still his choices. I put the photo on the bookshelf in Emma's room. Not prominently, but there. So someday, if Emma asked about her father, I could show her. Jennifer left around 2. Emma and I spent the afternoon doing the ordinary things that filled our days now. feeding, changing diapers, tummy time, reading board books, even though Emma couldn't possibly understand them yet. At 5, I got an email from Derek. The subject line just said, Emma. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. Claire, I know I haven't been in contact. I know I should have reached out sooner. The truth is, I don't know how to be a father to a child I spent months believing wasn't mine. I don't know how to look at Emma without seeing all my mistakes. I'm moving to Denver next month, taking a job there, starting over. Maybe that makes me a coward. Probably does. But I wanted you to know I got the paternity results. I know she's mine, and I'm setting up a college fund for her. It's the least I can do. I hope she grows up happy. And I hope someday she understands why I couldn't be there. Derek. I read it twice. Then I closed the email and deleted it. There was nothing to say back. No response that would change anything. Derek was who he was. A man who couldn't face his own mistakes. A man who chose running away over showing up. A man who would rather send money than love. That was his choice. His loss. And Emma would be fine without him. Better than fine. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine. 1 glass. My first since before I got pregnant. I thought about everything that had happened. The party, the discovery, the investigation, the dinner, the birth, the paternity test, the divorce. A year ago, I'd been someone else. Derek's wife. A woman who'd given up her career, her friends, her identity to support a man who never appreciated any of it. Now, I was just me. Claire, a mother, a freelancer, a woman building a life from scratch. And I was happy. Not perfectly happy. Not without struggles or fears or moments of doubt, but happy in the way that matters. Happy in my own skin. Happy with my choices. Happy with the quiet, ordinary life I was creating. I thought about Derek getting on a plane to Denver, starting over in a new city, probably telling himself it was for the best, probably finding new ways to avoid dealing with who he was. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity, just indifference. He didn't matter anymore, not to me, not to my life. He was just someone I used to know, someone who'd made bad choices and had to live with them. And I was someone who'd made good choices, who'd found her strength, who'd fought for her daughter and won. I finished my wine and went to check on Emma. She was sleeping on her back, arms flung out to the sides, mouth slightly open. Completely trusting. Completely at peace. I stood there watching her breathe, listening to the little sounds she made in her sleep. This was my family now. Small. Simple. Just the two of us. And it was enough. More than enough. 3 months later, I got another email. This time from Derek's lawyer. Derek wanted to establish a formal visitation. Nothing dramatic, just a few hours a month when he was in town visiting his mother. Supervised at first, building slowly. I talked to Sandra. She said it was up to me, that I could refuse, given Derek's lack of involvement so far. Or I could allow it, see how it went. I thought about it for a week. Talked to Jennifer. Talked to my therapist, who I'd been seeing since before Emma was born. Finally, I wrote back, Derek can see Emma, but on my terms, at my apartment, with me present. 2 hours once a month? If he commits to that for 6 months, we can discuss more. His lawyer agreed. The first visit was awkward. Derek showed up at my apartment with a stuffed bear bigger than Emma. He sat on my couch like he was afraid to touch anything. He held Emma for maybe 5 minutes before she started crying, and he handed her back to me, looking relieved. He didn't talk much, just asked basic questions. How much did she eat? Was she sleeping? Did she look like him? I answered simply, gave him space to figure out how to be there. After 2 hours, he left, said he'd see us next month, and he did. He came back the next month. And the month after that, always awkward, always brief, but showing up. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the father-daughter relationship I'd once imagined, but it was real. And maybe that was enough for now. A year after Emma was born, I was sitting in my apartment working on a laptop while she played on a mat nearby. My freelance business had grown. I had 6 regular clients now, enough that I was thinking about hiring help. My phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Is this Claire Mitchell? Yes. This is Dr. Wilson from Riverside Fertility Center. We're doing a follow-up study on patients whose partners underwent testing with us. Would you have a few minutes to answer some questions? I almost hung up, but something made me stay on the line. What kind of questions? We're looking at outcomes for couples where one partner had severe oligospermia. Specifically, we're interested in cases where natural conception occurred despite low probability. Why? We're trying to understand the factors that contribute to unexpected pregnancies. It could help other couples in similar situations. I looked at Emma. She was on her stomach, pushing up with her arms, trying to figure out crawling. Okay, I said. I'll answer your questions. We talked for 20 minutes. Dr. Wilson asked about my pregnancy, about the conception, about whether Derek had been on any medications or supplements at the time. Did your partner ever follow up after his initial testing? She asked. No, he never went back. That's common, unfortunately. Many men are embarrassed or in denial about fertility issues. But spontaneous improvement can happen. Stress reduction, dietary changes, even time can affect sperm count. Are you saying his count might have improved? It's possible. Without retesting, we can't know. But natural conception with severe oligospermia, while rare, is documented. Usually the cases we see involve some improvement in sperm parameters over time. After we hung up, I sat with that information. Maybe Derek's test results had changed. Maybe his body had healed somehow. Maybe that explained Emma. Or maybe we'd just beaten impossible odds. Either way, Emma was here. Real, healthy, mine. The why didn't matter as much as I thought it would. 2 years after the divorce, I went on my first date. His name was James, a teacher at the elementary school where I'd started volunteering. He was patient and kind and made me laugh. It didn't work out. 3 dates, and we both realized we were better as friends. But it felt good to try, to put myself out there, to remember I was more than just Emma's mother. I started going to a book club, joined a gym, made new friends who didn't know anything about Derek or the drama or any of it. I was building a life that was entirely mine. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd imagined when I married Derek at 26, but a good life, an honest one. One where I didn't have to shrink myself or apologize for taking up space. 3 years after Emma was born, Derek moved back to California. Not to our old town, but close enough. He asked to increase his time with Emma. By then, Emma knew who he was, called him Daddy, talked about him between visits. She didn't understand the complicated history, didn't know about the party or the affair or the paternity test. She just knew she had a dad who came to see her sometimes, who brought presents and took her to the park, who was trying, in his imperfect way, to be present. It wasn't what I'd hoped for when I was pregnant, but it was real. And Emma seemed happy with it. That was what mattered. One spring day, 4 years after everything fell apart, I was at the park with Emma. She was running around the playground, her dark hair flying, laughing with the other kids. A woman sat down on the bench next to me. She was about my age, holding a baby. How old are you? She asked, nodding at Emma. 4. Yours? 6 months. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching our kids. Is her father around? The woman asked. Sometimes. We're divorced. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. She looked surprised. Really? Really. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted makes room for what you actually need. The woman smiled. That's a good way to look at it. Emma ran over, out of breath. Mama, can I have a snack? Sure, baby. I pulled out fruit snacks and handed them to her. She ran back to her friends. She's beautiful, the woman said. Thank you. You must be proud. I am, every day. And I was. Proud of Emma? Proud of myself. Proud of the life we'd built from the wreckage of the one I'd lost. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea. The apartment had a small patio now. I'd moved to a bigger place once the freelance work picked up. 2 bedrooms, a real office, and this patio with just enough room for a chair and some plants. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Emma told me about her dance recital next month. Can I come? I thought about saying no, making up an excuse. But Emma had been excited telling him about it. Had specifically asked if Daddy would be there. Yes, I'll send you the details. Thank you. 2 words. Simple. But more than he would have given me 5 years ago. People change. Sometimes, a little, if they want to. Derek was trying to be a better father. He'd never be a good ex-husband, never apologize for what he'd done, never acknowledge the pain he'd caused. But he was showing up for Emma. And for her sake, that was enough. I looked up at the sky. Stars were coming out, bright against the darkening blue. I thought about the woman I'd been. The one who'd sat in that house, folding Derek's laundry, planning his birthday party, trying so hard to be enough for someone who would never see her. That woman felt like a stranger now. Someone I used to know. Someone I was grateful to have left behind. I'd spent so long thinking I needed to be loved by someone else to matter, to be valuable, to be whole. But sitting here, on my patio, in my home, with my daughter sleeping safely inside, I understood something I'd never known before. I was whole on my own, always had been. I just forgot for a while. The best revenge wasn't making Derek suffer, wasn't exposing him publicly or taking everything in the divorce. The best revenge was this quiet life, this ordinary evening, this peace I'd built from nothing. A life where Derek didn't matter, where his opinion didn't define me, where his presence or absence didn't shake my foundation, because I'd built my foundation on something stronger than his approval. I'd built it on myself, and that was something no one could take away. Inside, Emma stirred. I heard her on the monitor, the soft sounds she made when she was half awake. I went to her room. She was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. Mama? I'm here, baby. I had a dream. Want to tell me about it? We were flying, you and me, up in the clouds. That sounds nice. It was. You were holding my hand. I'll always hold your hand. She lay back down. I pulled the blanket up and kissed her forehead. Mama? Yes? Are you happy? The question surprised me. 4 years old, and she already knew to ask it. Yes, baby. I'm very happy. Good. I want you to be happy. I want you to be happy too. I am. I have the best mama. She closed her eyes and was asleep again within minutes. I stood there watching her, this tiny person I'd created, this miracle I'd fought for, this daughter who'd saved me without even knowing it. The party where Derek humiliated me felt like a lifetime ago, like it happened to someone else. And in a way, it had. That woman who dropped her ultrasound on the floor, who heard her husband say a baby wouldn't make him stay, who sat through that humiliation in stunned silence. She was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who'd walked through fire and come out clean on the other side. I'd lost a husband, a house, a life I'd carefully constructed, but I'd gained myself back. And that was worth more than anything I'd lost. I went back to my porch and sat in the dark, listening to the night sounds. Dogs barking in the distance, cars passing. The wind in the trees. Normal sounds. Beautiful sounds. The sounds of a life fully lived. Fully mine. And if Derek was out there somewhere, in Denver or California or wherever he'd ended up, thinking about the family he'd thrown away, the daughter he'd questioned, the life he could have had, that wasn't my problem anymore. My only problem was deciding what Emma and I would do this weekend. Maybe the zoo, maybe the beach. Ordinary decisions, small moments, the kind that build a life worth living. And I was living it, finally. Completely. Without apology. The past was behind me. The future was wide open. And I was exactly where I needed to be.